Well, this is the RareDAO Hats tree. So for those unfamiliar, the branding's not the best, but RareDAO is the DAO that was launched in August 2021 to support Super Rare, the one-of-one crypto art marketplace. We've done millions of revenue in terms of one-of-one crypto art sales, and sort of trying to really wave the flag for artists and collectors of digital fine art broadly. And one of the main goals of the DAO is to steward the protocol that the marketplace is built on, as well as the shared resources in our DAO treasury. All of the revenue generated by the marketplace goes into this treasury, and then it leaves that treasury as payment to service providers like Super Rare Labs, grantees, the foundation, etc. So we're managing the upgrade authority over contracts, as well as the flow of value through the system, and sort of the information and documentation on top of that. This tree we created, it was quite a journey. I first met the Hats guys back in December 2022, and we learned a lot about the protocol. They learned a bit about RareDAO, and it became clear to me that our foundation had to grow up quite a bit, and our DAO needed some more structure. So we took the next 8 months to sort of build out the organization that could integrate with Hats well, focusing on kind of modular subgroups, and clearly defined responsibilities. Then in August of last year, we kicked off a services agreement, and sort of like a deeper role discovery process with their team. The output of that was this wonderful tree. So I'll actually kind of start from the middle and work outwards. This is sort of the heart of the engine. This is our DAO council. It's a 4 of 7 multi-sig. We do not use on-chain executable voting, though we are working towards that. And Hats has really helped us bridge that gap between sort of entirely off-chain governance to increasingly on-chain governance. And this holds the DAO treasury. This holds all of the protocol upgrade authority. And then also sort of in the supporting off-chain legalware, that's mainly consisted of the foundation's bylaws and sort of governing documents. The council has a lot of authority. They can replace the director. They can set new policies. They can modify the bylaws themselves. And so this is a really important role to keep capture resistant. And Hats lets us do that. This is not currently a Hat signer gate. That is to say a Gnosis safe whose members must be wearing a hat in order for the safe to work, but we do hope to implement that in the future. And it's sort of the center of the tree. The main reason why we have these two hats above it is just as we're kind of developing this out, making sure that we don't actually accidentally break anything that can't be recovered, as well as ensuring with the RareDAO configurator that we can automatically mint hats based on certain conditions. The top hat is held in a 2 of 3 Gnosis safe, consisting of the foundation director, the supervisor, and the operator, which is myself, and the DAO council. So sorry, it's a 3 of 4. And essentially it's sort of this joint partnership between the foundation and the council to manage the entire role structure. Heading down the tree, you can see that we have sort of the 3 main groups. Starting on the left, we have the foundation. The foundation is under admin authority of the council in this tree. And we're sort of testing out that model and looking to see if that's the right fit. In the meantime, it does seem to be working quite well. But this mainly consisted of the director is sort of our nucleus. For those unfamiliar with like how a Cayman Foundation is structured, you have a director and a supervisor. The supervisor is in charge of making sure that everything stays compliant at a high level, and making sure that the director stays accountable. So if we were to rebuild this tree, one of the things that we might do is set the supervisor as admin of the director, but we decided not to take that step initially just to keep things more simple. The director is in charge of day-to-day operations of the foundation, executing agreements, administering sort of the governance, and making sure that the council is adhering to the law. And so that's a very important hat. And as you can see, sort of the sub-roles in the foundation stem from there. I just entered sort of the edit mode, so you can see where we're thinking of expanding the tree next. The hat that I wear, the primary one, is foundation operator over here. And this is sort of like a general manager sort of situation. I am engaged full-time with RareDAO Foundation to administer the council, our internal foundation operations, as well as the grants committee and sort of general business strategy. And then we also have the foundation accountant, who manages our books and serves sort of a secretarial role. And then we just have this open hat here for foundation contributors. I'll actually come back to the rare collection, which is this hat right here. This is a new sort of like multi-sig art collection that we've launched, heavily inspired by hats that we'll iterate on, but is still sort of being formed. Coming over to this middle group, we have our grants committee.
Brandon, do you mind zooming in just a little bit?
Yes, I'm on a gigantic monitor, so
Thank
thank
you.
you for that reminder. We have a grants committee member hat over here, and this is special because these are HSG signers on the grants committee safe right here. The grants committee safe holds the grants committee funding. It's what issues payments to our grants recipients, and it also appoints the grants committee chair, which has some special authorities in Charmverse, which I'll show here in a bit, to kind of carry along the procedural elements of our grants program. One thing I forgot to mention on the foundation side, and this is like not super like the intended use of HATS protocol, but it is useful for keeping track of our Gnosis safe addresses. So you see these hats here that don't have any children, our foundation operating expense account, and our network engagement fund. The primary intent here is to bring legitimacy to these Gnosis safes, making it transparent that these exist. At this point in the organization, everybody can see that the wearer of this hat, which is the Gnosis safe from here, and go view the funds, the transactions on those Gnosis safes. And if we ever needed to move those assets to a new Gnosis safe, for instance, if it becomes incompatible with a module we want to use or whatever, we can just reassign that flag to the new safe, kind of granting legitimacy to that wallet and telling people where to look. The last sort of group is the DAO Ops team. And this is an interesting one because it ties into how the organization has developed over time. Before we really developed out the foundation's internal structure, this was the main sort of delegated authority underneath the council. So the DAO Ops stewards are primarily tasked with setting up the council agendas, like telling them, it's time to do this transaction, tracking invoices, that sort of thing, and administering the forum-based governance process and snapshot voting. So I'm also currently serving as lead DAO Ops steward, and as it stands right now, the foundation operator role and the lead DAO Ops steward role are very similar. You see on the DAO Ops steward, we have the continued operations of the council, governance documentation, attending the council meetings, preparing the agenda, et cetera. And the operator has similar responsibilities between managing all the foundation and DAO ops, but then also this additional responsibility of overseeing and aligning service providers. We have just some subsidiary hats here that don't have any hard authorities attached to them. This is mainly so down the line, we can expedite document sharing with sort of contributors to the council who aren't council members themselves. I guess any questions on the tree itself? After this, I plan to kind of go into Charmverse a little bit and show how we're using this in other tools. But any questions about the tree?
Yeah, hold on. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just curious about the foundation side. As you were kind of explaining it, I was imagining the integration of an on-chain org with an IRL, like legal org. And I'm wondering if that's what this is essentially. So like the foundation exists in, as a legal, the Cayman Islands, and can make decisions and do stuff and manage funds and everything in bank accounts, but then it's tied in and it mirrors. My question is like, does it mirror that, right? Does it mirror the legal structure that then ties into this the greater on-chain org?
That's definitely the goal. So like my goal in designing this, and this is where the HATS team was really helpful. We reviewed our bylaws very closely and made sure that the way that we were structuring the hat tree was aligned with that sort of legalware power structure. So I mentioned earlier that the council has the ability to replace the director. Now, using HATS protocol, they could just easily swap that hat. In real life, it's not quite as simple. There's, resolutions in the foundation, there's KYC, there's, some additional steps to actually register that with the Cayman government. but we're trying to make the IRL power structure and the on-chain power structure as parallel as possible, so that, as you know, like the awesome work Best Ape is doing with Ixion and LexDAO, kind of automating this legalware, as that becomes more readily available, we'll be ready to build more bridges between sort of the legal layer and the on-chain layer, as well as just trying to make that legal structure more transparent and intuitive for people. People aren't going to be able to read the bylaws and understand everything. And one of my goals in developing the Hats tree was just to create a visual representation of that power structure as a primer, maybe, or you know, a replacement for somebody who's not legally technical, to be able to kind of understand in a soft way how this is set up and what that structure might be, so that when they eventually get exposed to the bylaws, it's more accessible and they can translate easier.
That's sick. Thank you.
Is there anything else, or I can move on to the some of the integrations that we're using? Cool, I will go ahead. So can you see the Charmverse screen now?
Yep.
Awesome. So this is Charmverse. I hope most people here are familiar with it. I know Chris Carella is attending today, who was very instrumental in setting this up along with Zandra on their team. We've been talking to them for quite a while, and we're really excited in the last couple of months to be able to kick this off with them. Charmverse is sort of like a kind of knowledge management system for decentralized organizations or just any on-chain organization. But it's become a lot more than that for us. It's not just a Notion page. It's also pretty much the central nervous system of our grants program. And one of the primary things that I was looking for in adopting Charmverse is the ability to automatically manage roles based on hat ownership. So you can see here, these are all the roles in our Charmverse space. We have our grants committee with its 6 wearers. We have the grants committee chair, we have the DAO ops steward, we have the DAO council, we have the foundation admin role, which is actually granted to the foundation director, the foundation operator, and then we have the foundation contributor role, which is granted to 2 hats, the foundation operator and foundation accountant. So we've sort of like been able to use hats to import a role structure while also like being more granular to the needs of Charmverse. So there's not a one-to-one relationship between our Hats tree roles and our Charmverse roles, but we've been able to entirely build our Charmverse roles based on hat ownership. This took me about 5 minutes to set up. And I don't have to assign roles to anybody. When a new grants committee member joins, as soon as they log into Charmverse with that wallet, they instantly have all of the permissions due to them with no additional account creation or setup either on their end or mine, which is sick. If any of you have ever managed like teams in Notion or Slack or anything, or Jira especially, you know how insane the permissioning overhead becomes over time. And this lets us carry that into any application that we use. And the best way to visualize the impact that this has on actual workflows, not just like, oh, now I can view this page or I can't view that page, is to look at our grants application process. So I'll actually give like a broader view first, just because people may not be familiar with this aspect of Charmverse. They have this really great grants tool that allows you to sort of like have a nice, easy flow through application, review, approval, and then like the execution of the grant. People come in, they fill out a form. Anybody is capable of filling out a form using this template. They define milestones, and then it goes into a review process. I'll switch now to the template because it shows the rules a little bit better. So we have this stepper here that shows the life cycle of the grant. It's over on the right. So actually what I'm going to do is shrink this window a little. I'm not sharing the whole screen, so that won't work. But is this visible? I know it's not very zoomed in over on the right. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So we have these different steps here. We have an intake filter, we have rubric evaluation, committee approval, foundation approval, and then sort of like the milestone approval. And I'll kind of just go through each of them at a high level and highlighting the impact that the hats design or defined role has there.
If you, Brendan, if you command plus a couple times, control plus. Yeah.
Oh, big brain move. There we go. That excellent scaling of the Charmverse UI based on Zoom too. Love to see it. I would say Charmverse is Web3 Notion, but I wouldn't say it is just Web3 Notion because Notion doesn't even come close to having this level of like dedicated functionality for the operation of a grants program. And so there's aspects of it where there's feature parity with Notion, but at least for us, there's like key functionality that was not available in other areas. So we have this initial intake filter, which is just a pass fail. Is this spam? Is this relevant? And anybody on the grants committee can approve that. We have that grants committee role right there. And again, somebody logs into Charmverse with the grants committee member hat, they automatically can perform this initial review. Then we have rubric evaluation. Again, this is right into our grants committee, and they assign a number 1 through 5 based on these different rubric criteria, which has allowed us to get a lot more granular in our grant review. Then it goes up to the grants committee chair. We get a passing review on the rubric from all the different members. The chair is now in charge of making sure that the milestones are properly created, that all the amounts add up correctly, that things are kind of all managed well and packaged for the handoff to the foundation for legal execution and ready to go. Then the last step is foundation approval. The role of the foundation in the grants program is just ensuring that they're not in a regulated jurisdiction, that we are able to get a legal agreement executed, and if the grant amount is over a certain threshold, that we're able to perform KYC. So once those steps have taken, either myself or the foundation accountant or foundation director, using the foundation admin role in Charmverse by nature of our ownership of a hat, are able to kind of give that final sign off indicating that the agreement has been executed, and finally the grant will go live. So that would have required manually setting each permission, but because we have hats for each of those roles, we are able to just do that automatically. And jumping over to a platform called Den, which is just a front-end wrapper around Gnosis Safe that currently does not support hats, but is a really good illustration of why having an organizational graph saves time, is because when you go to our address book, every single wallet listed in here, besides a couple of grantees, wears a hat. Right now, I have to manually set permissions for each of them. I have to manually add each of them. This is duplicated information. All of these addresses either currently or formerly wore a hat. So the more platforms that we get to integrate role management with hats, the easier and easier this is going to become. A 15-minute task will turn into a 3-minute task, and the ongoing burden of managing roles will decrease significantly. I see a connection or a question from Maurice. Is there a connection from the tree to Charmverse? Brennan adds a role level 2 child hat under top hat, and would the IRL art team show up in Charmverse automatically? I believe I have to specify the role. I know that Chris has made some changes since we set up our roles, but essentially you would go into invites here, and I can set token gated links using hats protocol. I select a chain and then I just input my hat IDs, and then it's automatically going to take that role from the hat tree and put it in here. So not all of the roles in our hat tree are mapped in Charmverse. The foundation supervisor does not have many like day-to-day responsibilities. Actually, I need to go back and fill out the responsibilities. That's on me. And they are like not going to be reviewing grants documentation. They're there to make sure that we're complying with the Cayman government. So I don't need them in Charmverse. It would create bloat to have to scroll through their role. So it's nice I just go in and I define the hat IDs that I'm interested in. Yeah, did that answer your question, Maurice? And any other questions, I guess? Cool.
Awesome. Any other questions for Brennan on the tree or using hats and other tools?
What would you say, Brennan, that this is doing for you in your role as the operator? What benefits are you getting?
It makes it a lot easier for me to be able to, when I set up Charmverse, for instance, to know that I'm not creating ongoing work commitment besides just management of the grants committee. When you set an individual address as a permission in some website that, you know, as the person setting it up, you may only look at that once. That person moves on from the grants committee, but they still have permissions to that website. There's a peace of mind knowing that it's going to automagically reflect the on-chain structure of the hat tree, and making sure that we're maintaining the proper access control, because this isn't just like I mentioned before, can I view this page? Can I not? It's, am I able to get the foundation to enter legal agreements? Am I able to commit funds? Am I able to spend money? So the stakes are very high for our organization to make sure that we have the proper controls in place there. The other thing to mention, it's kind of difficult to show visually, is the role of Hat Signer Gate in the grants committee specifically. And I'd actually like to start implementing this in other safes. I just need to go through the effort of kind of like learning how to do that on Etherscan. But Hat Signer Gate is a Gnosis module that allows us to make it so that only the wearers of a hat can be signers on a Gnosis safe, and that wearers of that hat can permissionlessly claim ownership of that safe. So the grants committee has Hat Signer Gate integrated. And we actually had a grants committee member who hadn't attended meetings for a couple of months. And I was able to go to the council and say, hey, this person hasn't attended meetings in a couple of months. They haven't met the responsibilities of a grants committee member. After checking with that person, whether or not they'd like to kind of renew their commitment. And we were able to remove that hat, mint a new one. And it was a very seamless process. We weren't having to have the grants committee manage itself and modify those signers. We were able to leave that to a higher authority, which ultimately increases security and the amount of trust that the organization can have in that grants committee. It is impossible for them to just remove all the other signers that aren't colluding to steal funds and then send it to their own accounts. We have like total confidence that that money is secure because it's using Hat Signer Gate. And you know, that's probably that is actually the smallest Gnosis safe in our organization. I think it currently has about $100,000 in it. But I mean, we have obviously Gnosis safes that are orders and orders of magnitude larger than that. And so as we scale the use of Hat Signer Gate, there's just that additional layer of not just peace of mind, but like physical assurance, and that it actually becomes impossible without an insane amount of collusion for funds to be misappropriated.
Amazing, thank you.
Let's take the other side of that question, or the opposite question. What would you like to do, whether with hats or that hats doesn't yet allow you to do, or that you want to do with hats that something else doesn't allow you to do? That, yeah, what do you still need to make your job easier or your organization better?
I think more like it's tricky to like find the words to describe it, but a lot of it's around like Hodelan's question earlier, having more on-chain or Oracle-based representations of the legalware. So KYC status, whether or not an agreement has been executed, whether the term of that agreement is still in effect, like if it's a 1-year agreement that hasn't expired, stuff like that. Then being able to hook that into the eligibility modules and everything within hats, we could go from signing an agreement to the hat being permissionlessly mintable by that person instantly. I know there's a lot of people thinking about that, especially at LexDAO and MetaLex and these different groups. But I think that is what is really going to tie up these power structures. Because on the one hand here, we have like the physical impossibility of doing something with the money that the DAO doesn't want to be done with the money. But there's still a lot of things that can be done off chain. And the other piece is just every single tool that we integrate with, allowing hats as a onboarding mechanism for users to an account or permission setting. For example, we use a company called Rain Cards for our fiat payments. We get a little credit card that we deposit money into an escrow contract, and then we can spend that off chain. We manually set addresses for that. And that's a big one because like there's real money there, tens of thousands of dollars that are just on a card that can be used. So I think as more organizations use hats in this way and talk to their kind of tooling providers about these are our needs and what we're really looking for, that we'll be able to get more adoption from tooling providers as the time savings, the reduced friction to onboarding, and the increased security becomes more of a pain point or an opportunity point for their customers. So I think I'm just really looking forward to that network effect. More people using hats in a holistic way in their organization. Every person who contributes to the foundation, who's not an external service provider like a lawyer, that sort of thing, is wearing a hat. And that allows me to do so much. And we're seeing a lot of really creative hats use cases that are more finite. Like a great example of a really creative one is the Treasure DAO kind of system for using the roles v2 module in Gnosis Safe to have delegated on-chain voting power to some community elected people. But I think as we get to see more holistic organizational graphs, we'll see a lot more of the tooling come into place as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we have maybe 1 minute for one more question before we wrap up. Thanks a lot for taking us through this, Brennan. This was awesome. So, yeah, this was great. Excited to, oh, that was what I was going to mention, was that you don't need to go to Etherscan anymore for Hat Signergate. We have a small app prepared to help you get there soon so that we can bring that into the app. It's a bit more integrated experience, but we're doing a full refresh on the whole edit mode. So yeah, we can definitely help you get those rolling easier than going all the way to Etherscan at least. So keep us posted there when you're ready. Yeah, we can get you going.
I'm ready. Let's do it. That's hype.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll circle back then. Thanks a lot for showing this off. Excited to have more folks diving into the fully trusted, safe ecosystem and being able to have that mutual control, which is exciting. Anybody on the Hab Lab side have any closing words? We will see you guys back here in a few weeks, and excited to get you trying out the safe and nouns and Farcaster stuff. So hit us up if you have any desire to use any of those fun ideas, and we will see you in a few weeks. Thanks for coming out. Chat with you all soon.